Every now and then in the course of a long NHL season, sometimes you're just going to need your star players to say, follow me, we'll get this done. Tonight, the Oilers star players got things done.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, getting on into it, this is a fun episode. That was very much a hold on to your butts type game. You know, you think about Samuel L. Jackson in Jurassic Park right before they turn the power off and he takes a drag of his cigarette and says, hold on to your butts. That's what that game was tonight. Not exactly how you draw it up. You wouldn't want to play that game that way 100 times because the Oilers probably don't win it 100 times, but kudos to the Oilers' big guns. We'll start at the outset. We'll talk about the game at large, why it was so disjointed, why the Blues were able to get back in it. We'll tackle Connor and Leon down the stretch, just putting the team on their back. And then our final segment, we'll have a little bit more of an open-ended conversation about the lulls in a long season. So at the big picture here, it's one game against a team that's almost certainly not going to make the playoffs. The Blues are a middling team. If you watch the crossover edition we did with Locked On Blues earlier today, Haley Simon and I had a pretty open-ended conversation about the state of the two franchises, how they look after the summer, the offer sheets, the Kasperi Kapanen and waiver claim, all of the transactional moves that got these teams to where they're at. And it's a good conversation worth checking out if you're curious about why the Blues are stuck in the middle, even though they have some pretty good players. And the Oilers had the puck a ton in this game, especially in that first period, almost 6 full minutes of offensive zone time, 13-4 shots on goal, just a thorough control of the game. Of course, the problem there, they didn't put the puck in the net. And as condescending people on the internet like to say, expected goals, who's expecting them? Expected by whom? And unfortunately, those people who are typically being sarcastic because they don't understand the statistic, they have a point when you have moments like that where, yeah, it's great. The Oilers had the puck a ton in this game. They put a ton of heat on the Blues, especially early. And unfortunately for hockey, this isn't like football where through simple attrition, you're eventually going to bang the puck over the goal line. You know, there isn't a tush push in hockey where the Oilers can get that puck to the goal line and then jam it in with an offensive player who squats 600 pounds like the Eagles can. It's a real conundrum. And it is very easy to get frustrated and to kind of lose focus. And ultimately, that's kind of what I feel happened to the Oilers in this game. They got out to the 1-goal lead. McDavid scores the first goal of the game. We'll talk about that more in depth later on when we highlight the performances from Connor, Leon, and we'll throw Bush in there as well, who had 82% of the expected goals in his shifts tonight. He was great. But the Oilers get out to a 1-0 lead. They have the puck a ton. They're chasing, trying to get that second goal to create some separation. And to Jordan Binnington's credit, makes a couple nice saves. The Oilers miss a couple wide open nets. And the Blues are hanging around, you know, very reminiscent of the game against Detroit last week that went to the shootout, which the Oilers ultimately lost. You know, if you let a team that's hungry and desperate just hang around, they're going to keep trying. And St. Louis is not very talented. You know, Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Buchnevich, I like those guys. Neighbors is an interesting prospect, but for the most part, it's a very average to below average roster. And their guys tonight showed you a little something. You know, Shen, for all of the miles on his body, he was up for this moment. And I don't think the hit Ekholm throws in the neutral zone is interference. I think they're both going for that puck, and I think that should be a reasonable hit. I think that's very much reminiscent of the conversation we have about targeting in football, where would you like the defensive player to be able to play defense, or do we always default to letting the offensive player try and get the offense? The Blues ultimately score on that power play late in the game. They get in the game. And then the second Blues goal, you could feel the ground kind of unsteady underneath the Oilers there, where Blues throw a couple big hits. They forecheck very aggressively. They put some pucks on net. And one of the telltale signs that a team is kind of reeling, that they're a little bit stunned, is when everyone gets caught puck watching. If the puck is on one side of the ice and everybody on the defending team is drifting that way and looking that way, obviously they're not going to be able to keep their head entirely on a swivel. You know, if you're looking to your left because the puck is over here on the circle and an attacking player on the other team is creeping further and further down from the point, like Colton Parayko does on his goal to give the Blues the lead in the game, that's a telltale sign everybody's a little bit skittish and everyone's got a little bit of deer in the headlights. You know, the old Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. That's what happened here. The Blues scored 2 quickies in a 3-minute window, and the Oilers are kind of looking around like, we've been controlling this game all night. We've had 60, 70% of the scoring chances so far. What's going on here? And for a little bit there, it was dicey. You know, another thing that jumped out to me, and I'll be fair, I still think John Klingberg is working off a lot of the rust, and he looks okay mobility-wise, but the instincts, the positioning, that comes back with time, and he just hasn't played enough yet to really get an understanding of if he's working off rust or if this is what he is at this point. But him tripping over the net, coming out from behind the net on a zone exit, that told me the Oilers were a little bit skittish, that John Klingberg, who's been playing hockey probably since he was 4 or 5 years old, toe-picked himself and tripped and lost possession of the puck, and the Oilers had to waste a few seconds regrouping there. But to their credit, Connor and Leon said, we're not losing this game. And we're going to talk about that more in a second here. But this is the good outcome from loading up Connor and Leon on one line, where you have a lot of possession. You just feel like, hey, we didn't get the bounces. If we get those bounces, we win this game 3-4-2. And it's not really a conversation to be had. But because you had a hard time finding more offense, scoring goals, it put you in a position where you desperately needed Connor or Leon to do something down the stretch of this game, because you knew the depth guys were not going to be able to facilitate chance creation to the degree necessary to score. And there is no inevitability in sports. This isn't like a movie where the script is written and you know that based on how much time is left in the movie, the conflict needs to come to a resolution. Typically, the good guy is going to win. On occasion, the bad guy is going to win. You know, it's kind of like the lefty rule. 1 out of 10 movies, the bad guy will win most of the time. But Connor and Leon did their best to make it seem like it was inevitable that they were going to tie this game and give the Oilers a chance. And absolute kudos to the big guns stepping up when their team needed them. This was not a bad effort by any means, but I do think the Oilers have some questions as far as attention to detail, simple mistakes, and just missing opportunities. And that's really something that we all have to learn to deal with. You know, no matter what phase of your life you're in, learning to make the most of your opportunities. So even if you don't succeed, you can live with what you did. That's kind of the goal here. And I know the Oilers are probably a little frustrated that the Blues got back in this game and it went to overtime and that they needed to mount such a furious comeback down the last 5-10 minutes. You know, this team is far too good to be down in the mud with the Blues, but that's the reality of the National Hockey League. You are going to have nights where if you can't lock in, you can't be entirely focused, little mistakes will do you in. And the Blues have enough guys where Holloway, Parayko, Robert Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, they had more than enough to get this game to overtime. And it's okay because the Oilers won, but it is starting to become a bit of a theme that the Oilers are having a hard time with attention to detail. We are going to take our first break of today's show. When we come back, It's time to talk about Connor and Leon going insane to win this game. Coming up next. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, Chiefs, Eagles, rematch. And with FanDuel Sportsbook, there's no better way to make every play more exciting, and there are endless possibilities. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling Super Bowl MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. Feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, icing on the cake. The line has not moved. The Chiefs, 1.5-point favorites to get the three-peat. First time in the Super Bowl era a team could win 3 straight Super Bowls. So if you want to get in on the action, download the FanDuel app or head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5. And if you win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, it's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers, where we're talking about the 3-2 overtime win against the St. Louis Blues. And every now and then, you just got to throw your hands up and laugh and say, there's nothing you can do. You know, if you're the Blues, you probably feel like you played a pretty good game to drag this to overtime against the Oilers, as little possession and as few opportunities as you had to score in this game. And you get to overtime, and you know Connor and Leon are going to play at least 2.5 to 3 minutes of the 5 minutes of 3-on-3. They're most likely going to have Evan Bouchard out there with them. It could be Ekholm sometimes. Sometimes it's Nurse if guys are slow on their changes or if one is out there particularly long. But you survived that first rush, that first wave where Connor and Leon are out there with Bouch. And again, as the Blues, you feel pretty good about that. And you have the jam play at the net where the puck gets to Connor and the net's wide open. And credit to the St. Louis defender, they kept McDavid from being able to get that puck in a position to put it into the open net. It misses the net. The Blues recover. The Blues regroup. They come down to the other end. Skinner makes 1 or 2 nice saves in the overtime. And there was a real element of McDavid just saying, we're winning this game. At a fundamental level, down the stretch of regulation and then in overtime, there was a little bit of an attitude to the way he was attacking the offensive zone. And look, this is truly the most remarkable hockey player I have ever had the privilege of watching. It's hard to do McDavid's game justice because it's so deceptive and it's so imposing. That's the word, I think, more than anything that I think I use when I describe the way Connor McDavid plays. He is able to impose his will on the game, that if he gains the puck with any bit of speed, he's covering the entirety of the defensive zone, going through the neutral zone, and he's gaining at minimum the offensive zone with speed. Then, if he's going to attack the net and he starts jitterbugging his feet and chopping his hands, it's unstoppable. And ultimately, that's what sets up the Connor Brown goal. He takes on 2 defenders, 2-on-1, goes through both of them, has Binnington out of the net trying to get to him to prevent him from jamming it past him. And McDavid is able to backhand a pass, probably good 10, 15 feet to his left to Connor Brown, who puts it into a wide open net. And I started laughing because it's ridiculous. You shouldn't be able to make a professional sport look that easy. It's unfathomable to be as good at anything as Connor McDavid is at hockey. And that wasn't even the more impressive of the plays. You know, setting up the Leon goal to get to overtime was equally as imposing, and him saying, we're not losing this game. And I don't think Connor will ever get the credit he deserves for that type of leadership, the lead by example, until he has the championship. Because the way we talk about sports is so tied to team success, championships, rings, ring culture has fully permeated sports. And that is the prevailing sentiment now, that if you don't win championships, you are not as good as your contemporaries. And I know there are going to be people, I know there are people out there who think Nathan MacKinnon is a better hockey player than Connor because of his attitude and the way he leads and I won't say mean spiritedness, but the general attitude and abrasiveness that MacKinnon plays with from time to time, and the way he is with teammates and the way he is with his diet. And the way Connor played tonight was every bit as imposing and every bit as decisive. He looked up and down that bench and said, all right, me, Leon, and Corey Perry are going to win this game. We're getting to overtime, and then we're going to get out there and we're going to win this game. And there are not a lot of people on this planet who play professional hockey that can do that. There's maybe 5 or 6 of those guys, I would put Shesterkin in there as far as goalies. I think he's the only goalie in today's NHL where if I had a playoff game for my life, I would feel okay with him being the goalie. I think Nathan MacKinnon can do it from time to time. I think Jack Hughes can do it from time to time. I think Cale Makar can do it from time to time. And I think Quinn Hughes is right there as far as being able to just dictate a game and control the game. And that's not a knock on the other guys, on Sasha Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, David Pastrnak, Artemi Panarin. There are so many great players in our game today. But that type of singular focus of, I am going to do everything I physically can to go down and score. And what's special about the way Connor does it, it's not that he does it with overwhelming strength or physicality. It's, I am the fastest processing human in this sport. The way he sees the game is superhuman. The comparison you would make across sport are the guys who see the game before it happens. In basketball, the facilitator, someone like LeBron, who is such a gifted passer of the ball because he's able to manipulate defenses and draw guys to him. And he's developed a good shot over the years, even though he didn't have a great jump shot when he first got into the league. The pre-snap quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow, knowing what the defense is going to do ahead of time and getting the ball out quickly, on schedule, accurately. It's really important to be able to be decisive. And the speed at which hockey's played is so breakneck. And for Connor to be able to be the fastest player in a breakneck speed sport is a testament to his instincts and just how unbelievably smart of a hockey player he is. Because you can't tell me that it isn't astounding to watch somebody process the game as fast as he does to make the instinctual plays. Because fundamentally, he doesn't have the time to consciously think, skate, move, deke, pass. He's not actively thinking that. He just does it because that's how fast his brain operates. And that's something that we mortals here, we can kind of simulate when we play the sports simulation video games. I can kind of instinctually react, but that's a video game and it's not nearly as fast as real life. That's what makes Connor so special. He's got the mind for it, and he's got the physical ability, and he's got the best wingman in the sport. I mean, Connor's the best player in the world, but if we were handing out the Hart Trophy today on February 5th, I'd be giving it to Leon, who's having a tremendous season. And the Oilers need every last one of these goals, because for as many shots on goal as they're recording, go look down the box scores, guys. They don't have a lot of secondary scoring beyond their big guns. And I do think that's starting to become a bit more of a pronounced storyline as we've gone deeper into the season, that, waiting on Hyman, Nuge, Henrique, Connor Brown got on the sheet tonight, ended a long goal drought, which is great, but the Oilers need more goals. We're going to take our final break of today's show. When we come back, we'll tie a bow on this episode talking about the struggle of a long season and why it's sometimes difficult to maintain that razor-like focus all the way through. Coming up next, so be sure to stick around. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy, or a game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a real headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, and you don't have to waste time searching through endless listening. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now. It's a very useful feature to put together a good time out. This week, celebrating my birthday with my friends, we're going to go to Devils Golden Knights on Thursday so I can see Jack Eichel play in person for the first time in quite a while. Haven't seen him since he was in Buffalo. I have a Sabres Eichel jersey I plan on wearing on Thursday. Look forward to seeing it. We got our tickets through Game Time. We used the super deal. Couldn't believe the value we got. The Devils were a good team and the tickets weren't that expensive. The seat view, personal favorite. Before we bought them, we could see exactly what the view of the ice will look like in the venue. It's a reassuring feeling to know you're not going to be sitting behind a pole or on an awful angle. And the best part, you are covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hope everyone is enjoying this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. And man, that game was a real nothing burger for a good 30 minutes. And then things got serious. I thought the officials in this game did a really bang up job in both directions. I didn't think the Ekholm hit was interference. I thought Zach Hyman got boarded towards the end of the third period. And frankly, that should have been a major, at the very least, that should have been 2 minutes. Leon got away with holding the stick in overtime. That absolutely was a penalty. He absolutely grabbed the St. Louis player's stick, pulled him down, prevented the St. Louis player from being able to attack the net. Those two calls even out. It's whatever. I would understand if you're a Blues fan and you're pissed. You probably felt like you got jobbed by the officials, that the NHL did their boys, Connor and Leon, a favor by not calling those. But from an Oilers perspective, in the course of a long season, you're trying to piece together coherent, long-term narratives, storylines, plot lines. In the play itself, you want to get to understanding patterns as they develop. What the Oilers play says about their strengths and about their weaknesses. And tonight, I think you got a really full scope. You got a really full scope idea of how good they can be and how bad they can be. Or I shouldn't say how bad. The flaws of this team is probably the best way to say it, because they had a lion's share of the control of this game. They had so much puck possession. In the first period, they outchanced St. Louis 27-11. They outshot them 14-4. Significantly more puck possession, weren't giving anything back. Then in that middle period, the Blues won the middle period 20-18, unscoring chances at 5-on-5. But the Oilers dominated the high danger chances, 65%, 63% of the expected goals. They had so much puck possession in this game. But when you have shooting talent, either deficiencies or regression, the way the Oilers seem to this season, possession's great. It's 9/10 of the law. It's not a goal. And that's really the conundrum the Oilers are facing here. And it presents a fair and reasonable question. Do you want to play Connor and Leon together on the supposition that they can win the game by themselves? Because when you don't have them to supplement, whether it's Hyman, whether it's Podkolzin, Arvidsson, whomstever down the lineup, to help make those guys' lives easier, it puts so much on Connor and Leon. And look, tonight they were superb. They were outstanding. They won this game. throw Bouchard in there as well as far as controlling the game and augmenting what Connor and Leon were doing. But it also shows the weakness of this team that if you load Connor and Leon up on one line, and Corey Perry was up there with them tonight, I don't think who's up there with them, whether that's Hyman or Nuge, makes that much of a difference. I probably would say you want Hyman there for the net front stuff, but Perry is one of the Oilers' leading goal scorers. He's up there on the team's leaderboard. So you have questions. Can you afford to do this full time? I don't think so. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Oilers to play Connor and Leon together all the time in the regular season. I think if you need a goal, if you're chasing a game, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. That's part of trying to win. At the start of a game, you want to have those guys separate from each other because you want to have the possibility of playing 40-ish minutes of your game with at least one of those guys on the ice. You think about the Venn diagram of the Connor minutes, the Leon minutes, and then the overlapping minutes. You want to have at least 40 of the overall minutes of the game with at least one of the people represented on that Venn diagram, because most teams don't have guys that good. And that's a real tactical way you as the Oilers can control these games. And against a team like St. Louis, it was enough tonight. Connor can look across at those guys and say, we'll get this done, guys. I got this. Against better teams, with better defenses, with more comparable star talent, I genuinely worry. And look, it's the regular season. It's one game. I do think the Oilers have some issues to address as far as depth scoring. I think they definitely need the break that's upcoming for the Four Nations face-off, because the attention to detail just has not been there down the stretch the last 5 to 10 games. A lot of deficits, a lot of chasing, and especially these games against teams like Detroit, St. Louis. You got to beat these teams, man. They're not on your level. And to play around with your food and let them hang around and miss on opportunities, it's not indicative of a quality team. And we know the Oilers are better than that. We know they're better than they played tonight. They should have had 4 or 5 goals, but because they didn't score, the narrative around the game is different. And our conversation, it has to be different. You can't say, well, we should have scored 4. Well, if you should have scored 4, why didn't you? It's one of the real conundrums of evaluating a game like that, where they had so many chances and so much puck possession. They didn't come away with a whole lot to show for it. But that'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell so you get a notification whenever new content goes live. I will talk to you guys tonight, back-to-back game against the Blackhawks. We'll go soon as we can, soon as the game goes final. I will talk to you guys then. And until then, let's go Oilers.